Welcome to Behind the Scenes. I am your host, Hector Montalvo. This show is dedicated to asking tough questions for you, the viewers. We bring you their responses, and we let you decide. Joining us here today at our MCTV studios, we're honored to be sitting with Nancy Greenwood from Greenwood Insurance. Ms. Nancy, welcome to the show.
Well, Hector, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Ms. Nancy, for all those people and all those viewers watching us that don't know who Nancy Greenwood is, tell us who is Nancy.
Well, Nancy Greenwood is an insurance agent, and I am actually just about to celebrate 30 years in business. I started in Methuen back in 1981. I started from scratch. In those days, I didn't know we were in a recession, and so there was no financing available. So I bartered my office skills to use somebody's office, started my business, and here we are 30 years later. And I find that educating the public about insurance is probably one of my most important jobs as an insurance agent. Besides selling policies, I think educating people so that they buy the proper insurance and understand why they have to, which is why we're sitting here today, because I'm very outraged about the surcharge system in Massachusetts, and I think it really has to be addressed. And so hopefully, between the legislation and getting the word out on programs like this, the citizens will start to get empowered because their voices have to be heard in order to make a difference in the insurance. And hopefully this will be step number one.
Oh, I agree, and thank you for 30 years of service to the people of the community. Now, you mentioned surcharges. What is a surcharge, and how does a surcharge affect the people who pay their insurance?
Okay, surcharges are points that are put onto your insurance based on whether possibly tickets or auto accidents. And there's a listing of situations that are called standards of fault in Massachusetts. So if you happen to be exiting from a parking lot and there's an accident, you're considered more than 50% at fault. So points are assigned to you, and the points are based on how much is paid out on an insurance claim. So you get 3 points if it's under $1,500, then it's 4 points, up to $2,000 I think it is, then it's 4 points on your record. The problem is that in Massachusetts, they stay on your record for 6 years, and other states don't keep them on your record for 6 years. So it's very punitive. They don't age off very quickly, and if you have multiple incidents, you end up with a lot of accumulation of points. And in the past 3 years, Massachusetts has introduced competitive auto insurance, and in order to get other companies to come into Massachusetts, they've really given them a free hand in helping to change the rules and how things are applied. So today, if you have more than 3 points, if you're newly licensed, if you've never had a car insured, you end up in the high-risk pool for the most part, at least for a full year. And those rates can be substantially higher than the old voluntary rates that we used to get. But the surcharges, what set me off is that I have a young client, 23 years old, lives in Lawrence, father of 2 little kids, and stupidly, for 4 years in a row, he failed to get his car inspected. So ultimately, he has 8 points on his license. He has 6 points. The first ticket doesn't cause you any points. You just lose your discounts. Then after that, every ticket that you receive is 2 points, unless it's like disobeying the police or driving under the influence. Those are 5-point infractions. Otherwise, you get 2 points for each additional moving violation. Everything except a parking ticket is a moving violation. Honking your horn in a situation where they don't want that, a noise violation. Having a headlight out, they'll give you a ticket for improper equipment. What I can stress to everybody out there listening, if you get a ticket, fight it. Appeal your ticket, particularly if you get one for having a headlight out or a tail light out. It happens in the cold weather all the time. I tell everybody, get your car fixed within 7 days. But in the meantime, appeal the ticket, and when you show up in front of the judge, show him the repair. Show him that you have fixed your car and ask him, why should I be penalized? Now, if I pay this fine, I am now guilty and I have 2 more points on my license for having a headlight out, having something that's not a serious issue. Whereas in many states and other parts of Massachusetts, a police officer will give you a repair order. If they stop you for something minor like that, they give you 7 days to repair it. And then there's no surcharge. So if those 2 points end up on your record, they sit there for 6 years. It stays on your record for 6 years. So they accumulate on you. So it's hard to basically get a gap where all of a sudden you're free of points where you're getting the best discounted rates. But in this particular situation, I looked at this kid's rates. And again, 23 years old. And his 6 points that he has in the city of Lawrence, now he doesn't have full coverage on this vehicle, $824 he's paying per year for not having his car inspected. I just think that that's outrageous. And the reason it's outrageous is because in Massachusetts, the points are based, it's a percentage of other parts of your policy. So they look, if you look at your insurance policy, there are 12 different parts to the policy. So they take certain parts of those coverages, and there's a percentage that's charged. So in Lawrence, the rates are much higher to begin with, even if you're a good driver. So if you have points applied, it's a higher percentage than other places. So in Lawrence, it's $824 for this kid. If he moved to Methuen, those points would be $707. If he moved to Andover, those points would drop down to $527. So when I look at that, I see this disparity and I say, why does somebody in Andover not have to pay what people in other communities have to pay? Why should somebody in Methuen pay more than somebody in Andover? If you have done the same infraction, if you've caused the same amount of damage and you have the same amount of points, the points should be a flat fee. This is what they are in New Hampshire and many other states. If you have 1 point, it's $90. Everybody pays that $90. 2 points, $200. Everybody pays that 2 points, the same flat fee. That would be much greater parity. That would bring it so that anybody who's caused an infraction, you get charged the same. I just don't think that it's fair to penalize somebody based on where they live on a percentage. And so what I did was, initially I started by having a meeting with Representative Marcos Devers in Lawrence to bring it to his attention. And the reason I started with him, even though I'm in Methuen, is based on how expensive it is in Lawrence. And my thought was that if he could understand the importance of this, that he could then bring in other representatives from cities around the state that also are that high. And as a result, when you get that kind of grouping, then you have more voices. But ultimately, the people in Methuen will benefit. The people in Lowell will benefit. Everybody will ultimately benefit if we can bring this into line. Because again, 6 points in Methuen is $707, but $500 in Andover. So again, why should you be paying more in Methuen than your neighbor's paying just because they're over the border there? So that, and the fact that in Massachusetts, this stays on your record for 6 years. Okay, they charge you for 5, but it stays on for 6. Other states, it's 3 years. So if I have somebody that moves into Massachusetts and they have lived in another state, they could have had accidents and tickets 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and 6 years ago. But when I get their driving record, I'm only allowed to see 3 years of their history. So they obviously are going to possibly get a better rate than somebody in Massachusetts, because if you move around Massachusetts, doesn't matter where you move, we still have your records because you're in our system. So again, there's an unfairness there, and I really think that that has to be addressed. So other states look at 3 years of a history. They don't look at 6 years. They have a flat percentage, cost per point as opposed to percentage base. So that's what my initial concern was about this. And I just think that it should be brought under some kind of rules where there's a lot more even parity there. I just am concerned about it.
Now, you mentioned a moment ago that you have brought this to the attention of State Rep for Lawrence. What are you looking to accomplish? What do you think needs to be done? How do we address this?
They have to do it legislatively. You have to pass legislation because these companies are obligated to follow the rules of Massachusetts. And so you have to change the rules in order to get the companies to change. The different companies don't not charge you on points. They don't have a different system. It's not up to them. They basically buy into the state system. And the state says this is how the points are assigned and that these are the standards of faults. And so they don't have the flexibility to say, well, we're not going to charge you because we don't think a no inspection sticker is worth being charged for. They have to follow the legislation. So you have to change the legislation, and that's why I decided to start with a representative.
Now, you mentioned that the competitive rating. What has changed in Massachusetts in regards to that issue?
Well, one of the big things is that the insurance companies now look at your application. When you apply for insurance, you're supposed to list all household members, not people who drive the car. All household members are supposed to be listed on your policy, even if they have their own insurance. If somebody in your household has their own insurance, you list them, but you defer them off the policy. However, if you don't list a household member, and the reason you have to is that they're automatically covered under your insurance. If you look at your insurance policy, it tells you household members. So even if you're not putting somebody on the policy because you don't want to pay the rates, whether it's your child who's got a license or if it's a spouse who's got a license and they're not experienced, by not putting them on the policy in order to save money, that's considered insurance fraud. That's called premium fraud. And as we mentioned right before the show started, recently we received a letter. And so the insurance companies have some way that they're connected to the registry, and they are able to track clients by their address and who has been issued a license in that household. And we recently received a letter from an insurance company in Massachusetts about one of our clients, telling us it's come to their attention, based on this new system they use, that there's a household member with a license that's not listed on this insurance policy. It happened to have been this woman's daughter, and her license had been issued 2 weeks before. So there is, to me, it's Big Brother. Really concerns me that they're able to do that. However, what they put on here is about listing the operator and properly classifying them as a principal operator or an occasional operator. And what they put right out in writing to us, which we provide to the client, it says, as you know, the claims department is reviewing each claim for rating, classification, accuracy. If a policy is identified where a principal operator is listed as occasional, that produces a cheaper rate, the claim may be denied. So if you have a household with 3 cars and 3 drivers, and yet you say that your child is really just an occasional operator, sometimes they'll go to 2 different agents and play a game of splitting up insurance, and you're saying that your child is an occasional operator when it's truly the primary operator, and they have an accident, the insurance company can walk away from your claim because you have lied about their use. They're listed, but they're saying that they only drive it occasionally instead of primary. And there's a difference. It can be $800 a year difference. However, they have the right to walk away from your claim because they say you have lied about the primary use of the vehicle. And we recently had a case of a husband and wife who had come into us because we had their home insurance in the last spring and bought a policy for both their 2 cars. Then in November they came in and the wife said, gee, I bought myself a Honda because better on gas and blah, blah, blah. Well, okay, so no other drivers, no. Well, about 3 weeks later, their daughter come bopping in the office. Oh, I'm here to pay my insurance bill. Who are you? And she handed over the insurance inspection where she had taken the car down to do the insurance inspection and she had signed off on it. She wasn't listed on anything. We didn't even know who she was. So she handed over a license and we put her on the policy. And the family got very angry. She came in very angry. It was $1,500 because she had a brand new license. And so what they opted to do was exclude her. You can exclude somebody from your policy. You sign the exclusion, they sign the exclusion, and you don't get charged for them. But if they have a claim, if they're driving one of those vehicles at the time of an accident, you are not getting paid and you get canceled for material misrepresentation. So you really don't do yourselves any favors when you misrepresent anything on an insurance application. Because what people say is, oh, I own the car. Well, you can own 5 cars. But you're not driving 5 cars. Somebody's driving those cars. And so if you don't list people properly, you find yourself not being paid, then you get canceled for material misrepresentation. And they are working at having that classification set up in the computer system, so when you go to another agent, they're going to know that you've been canceled for not being honest with the insurance company. And that's not a nice designation to have on you because it just means that you're not going to get the best rates. Who's going to offer you a voluntary rate if they know you've already been caught being untruthful? So it can be financially devastating. So you have to be upfront about who's driving the cars, even if they don't live with you. Okay, sometimes people insure several cars, and they're for their friends who live out the places, but they've got the good driving record. And if you look at an application for insurance, many people say, oh, the agent filled it out. Well, guess what? You signed it. So if you don't look at it, you don't question it, you don't have a conversation, you've just signed possibly a fraudulent application. But the application itself, everybody's insurance application, has a thing about listing anybody who will drive the car and all household members. And when you get your actual insurance policy, right on the back of the insurance policy, the same statement is there. If you or someone on your behalf has given us fraudulent or improper information about where the car is garaged or who's driving it, we can cancel your policy or deny a claim. So it's all there in black and white, and it's just when people say, well, I don't know, I didn't know. Guess what? You signed the application. So if an agent's trying to give you a cheap policy, you better be questioning it, because they're just going to, if there's ever a claim, they're going to say, well, no, you signed that. That's what you told us. And so it's one word against another. You have to be very careful on auto insurance.
Which was my next question was, how does the insurance company prove that someone basically is driving that vehicle most of the time?
Because if there's a claim, they're going to talk to you. They're going to take a statement from you. And matter of fact, yesterday I was talking to a professional here in Methuen, and he was buying a car. He and his wife only have one car. The wife really doesn't drive, but the daughter recently got a license, and she's had daddy's car more than he has, and so a second car was needed. And the question came up, well, do we put it under my wife's name and list the daughter as an occasional operator? And so I explained to him about this circumstance here in writing. And also we had a client whose son came home from college and had a car accident. And during the course of the interview, he said, oh yeah, this is my car. And so originally they were going to deny the claim. They put it into investigation, but they said, well, sure, but I live in another state at college, so when I come back, this is the car I get to use. And so they decided that was an occasional use was proper because he was only home for a few months out of the year, and then when he came back full-time, he was changed to the primary operator. So in the course of a conversation, it's like the young woman who came bopping into our office saying, I'm coming to pay my car insurance. So she looks at that as her car. It's under her mother's name, but it's her car. She's the primary operator. And they'll ask you, how many days do you take it to school? Do you take it on the weekends? And if you lie, now you get canceled for lying versus being truthful. You might get denied either which way, but they do have the right to question the operator, question the owner, and they're not going to roll over and just pay a claim. You know, if they think that they're going to get into litigation based on the liability issue or injuries, they're going to do a thorough investigation. And again, if you misrepresent something, then you just have a chance of getting denied the claim and being canceled as well. So that is how they find out that they do have the right to talk to people. And in conversation, how many of us want to coach our children to lie? You know, that's the other part. You know, teaching your children to lie on something that important, because they're going to buy insurance for the rest of their life. And as difficult as it is, they need to be truthful. What I tell our young clients or people that call for quotes, buy an old car. Don't buy something that needs collision or comprehensive. And what we coach our young people is that if you go to a car dealership, we give them a business card and say, you call us before you give them a down payment. You call us number. We'll tell you what the insurance is going to be, because you might be able to make that car payment, but can you afford the insurance? Plus the gas, plus everything else that goes with it. So buy an older car. The way our classification works in Massachusetts, 0 to 3 years is the most expensive period to pay insurance. 3 to 6 years, it drops down some. Over 6 years, you're now an experienced operator. But during those first 3 years, when the rates are so high, don't buy a fancy car. Don't buy a car that's been financed. Buy something that's basic transportation. All you need then is your liability coverage. You don't need to worry about collision. You don't need to worry about theft coverage. It's the cheapest way to have transportation, build up the experience, and not pay an outrageous insurance premium. I mean, in this man yesterday, $2,300 is what's going to cost him to have his daughter listed as a primary operator on this automobile. But when I send this off to him, I'm going to send him a copy of this letter and explain to him why I told him to list her as the primary operator. Because in truth, it is. He said, yeah, I know. She'll be telling everybody, it's my car, even though it's under Daddy's name. So though it's expensive, it can be a lot more expensive if you don't list them properly. Because think about it. If an insurance company walks away from your claim and there's an injury involved, what's going to cost you to go to a lawyer? You know, that retainer is a lot more than that insurance premium. So you really, and you can finance your premium. You can pay it over 10 months. So there are ways to get around it, but don't buy a fancy car. Don't buy a car that needs a lot of coverage. Just get some basic transportation.
What about privacy for those people that that live in the household that are not listed in any registry database in regards to insurance or anything? How does that play?
Well, the application says household members. Household members are supposed to be listed, even if they're kids, because the insurance company has the right to track the fact that you have children, and they're going to have a license at some point, and so they'll need to know. And I can tell you that my daughter had a friend in New Hampshire and had a license, had a car. totaled it, or got hit, and the car was a total loss. And her mother said, well, I'm not putting you on my policy. She had to surrender her driver's license. You have to surrender your license, otherwise you have to be listed on the policy. The law says, and in Massachusetts these companies have the power, household members are supposed to be listed, whether they have a license or not. So somebody has to pay, and the Massachusetts law says if you have a child who gets their driver's license, you have to put them on your policy in 60 days. There's a 60-day window. The company can still deny the claim in those 60 days, but for the most part, you've got a little bit of leg room there, wiggle room if you've had the license less than 60 days. But the Massachusetts law says a parent is obligated to put the child on their policy in the 60 days. Now, you can exclude them, like I told you this other couple did. They've got this daughter driving around in an automobile, and she's excluded from coverage. So if there's any accident, this kid is out there with a judgment. Get a judgment against you, it lasts for 20 years. So you're going to have a long time paying back, something. So it doesn't pay to not be honest on car insurance. Because of the changes in the past few years under the competitive rating program, the companies have much more power than they've had in a long time in Massachusetts. This is why we need our legislator to be looking out for us, and which is why I started with the expensive territory, because if you're in a territory like Andover, why would you make waves? Your constituents are doing just fine. So that's why we have to start with the ones who are really paying. Anybody out there who has a child coming up with a driver's license, has an insurance permit to drive, it's in your best interest to be talking to your representative and saying, we need to fix the system.
So this is another way for the insurance companies to make more money, in my view. Because if you are an excellent driver, and I guess in Massachusetts, do they go by steps now, or did they?
Yeah, they're points. Yeah, they change it every few years, right?
So if someone, I know that a few years back, the highest point was a step 9.
Well, that was your best rate. In step 9, now you're 99 is the best one. But you can have up to like 40 points on your license too, which probably means you shouldn't be driving.
Correct. So if you had a 99 rate on your driving record, means that you're entitled to a lower
You get the best discount, right? You have the best discount.
But if someone is a new driver or has a step 15 or whatever it is, even though you have a good record, your rates go up automatically?
If they're listed on your policy because they don't have a policy, if they have another policy of their own or they're listed someplace else, they don't get charged on everybody's policy. They just have to be charged on somebody's policy because whether they're paying or not, they're covered. They are insured. So the insurance company, even though they're not collecting a premium, if that person gets behind the wheel of the car as a household member and causes an accident, there are certain things that they have to pay to the other party involved. Because if you injure somebody, there's a claim there. And under certain parts of the policy, your policy will have to pay for injuries to somebody. But the optional parts of your policy can all be suspended. And that's your collision, your optional bodily injury, and higher property damage. So it's really not a good thing to do. But they do have the right to do that. And what they point out in that letter is as a household member, they are covered. We're not getting paid for them, but they are covered. So we're entitled to be paid for the fact that they're there and potentially can drive that car. So that's what I'm saying. The companies have the power these days. And as a case in New Hampshire, you have to surrender the license. And the same thing will happen in Massachusetts.
Wow. Just want to remind the viewers, you are watching Behind the Scenes. I am your host, Hector Montalvo. We are joined here at our MCTV studios today with Nancy Greenwood from Greenwood Insurance here in Methuen. And Nancy, I just want to get back to you. You mentioned that you've been in touch with the State Representative Marco Devers from Lawrence. How has he responded to this?
Well, once I brought him all kinds of papers and documents and laid them out on a table. And once he could see, because most legislators don't know about the insurance. Unless you have an agent like me who will sit down and go over every single part. Everybody gets an insurance lesson when they come in. People don't understand car insurance. So when I was able to break it down for him and to show him the different parts and how the percentage of surcharge works against somebody, primarily in the more expensive districts, the light went on. And he very much understood. And this can keep millions of dollars in our local communities if we can get this system changed and change it to 3 years. Why should our local citizens be paying for 5 and 6 years? I mean, 5 years after you've had an incident, you're still paying and it's still on your record. That's just not fair in my mind. And I think that it causes people to do insurance fraud because they're just up against it with the economy being as bad as it is. But to just sidetrack also 1 minute, I had a woman come in the other day to get a quote on her policy in Methuen, and she has a son living with her, and when I looked at his record, he has a DWI not long ago, and she said, yeah, came back from Afghanistan. Said he wasn't a drinker before he went. She said, he might have a beer or two. She said, but he came back and hadn't been able to decompress yet, and got a DWI, was out, kept drinking, he was drinking more than he did before, and you're not driving in Afghanistan and Iraq anymore, you're here in these crowded cities, and so he ended up with a DWI. Loses his license, costs him thousands of dollars to fix it. Now he has to go through the high-risk pool because of the points on his license. His brother, same thing, went over, spent 14 months in a war zone, came back, got a DWI. We're asking a lot of these people going over in our military, a lot of them are coming back with alcohol problems. Now think though, now after serving our country, he comes back, has an infraction like this, his insurance is surcharged, he loses his license, it costs him thousands of dollars, and now there's a stigma on his record because for the next 5 years, a company doesn't have to offer him voluntary rates. If you have a DWI on your record within 5 years, most companies won't offer you a voluntary insurance policy, and they don't have to sell you collision and comprehensive.
Really?
So there's just a lot of little things like that. And unfortunately, years ago, I met the person on the state level who was in the insurance department, and they were pretty clueless about what happens on the street level. So I just think that we really need to get our citizens engaged, and they should be asking their insurance agents a lot of questions. And if their agents aren't familiar with what's going on, they should be shopping around because it's really important to get somebody who will give you some real good information. It's not about cheapness, it's about being accurate because the insurance companies will deny your claim, and then they will cancel you and you find yourself in a worse situation.
Yeah, you'll have your car towed and
absolutely.
It costs you a lot more money after that.
Exactly. Exactly, because their other thing is that the local police departments have a little computer on the back of their cars and they drive around. Originally it was for finding stolen cars because it reads the license plates. I think it can scan something like 1,000 plates every couple of minutes or 1,000 plates a minute. So if your insurance is canceled, the registry revokes your license plates. So the police officer driving around, now he tows your car. He finds out you have no insurance because your plate has just popped up on his computer screen.
That's correct. Nancy, we have less than a minute left. I understand that your agency doesn't just deal with auto insurance, they also deal with home insurance.
Yes.
I'd like to get you to come back on our show at a future date to discuss homeowner insurance and
absolutely.
How that would benefit. Yeah. But for those people that are seeking to have insurance or have questions in regards to surcharges, how do they reach Nancy Greenwood?
They can call our office at 978-683-7676. We're on the web, nancygreenwood.com, and we're at 11 Haverhill Street in Methuen. So they can stop by, they can give us a call, and we review policies free of charge, make suggestions, but we're more than happy to review something or answer people's questions. It's not a problem.
Well, I appreciate you coming out and discussing this particular important issue with our viewers. I want to thank the crew at MCTV. I'd like to thank the staff at MCTV, and thank you at home for watching. Join us next time as we go behind the scenes to ask the tough questions, bring you their responses, and we let you decide. Thank you for watching.